Howdys and salutations, y'all! Long time no see. I guess it really hasn't been, but it sure feels like it with the whole darn weekend going by. I'd ask how y'all have been, but I know it ain't the chattiest bunch, and that is a-okay. Feel free to just linger long as you like. This is absolutely a chill stream, even if I never stop talking. So, I know we've done a little bit of fan art and some fun stuff with Art Fight, but the point of this is also, to actually improve our skills a little bit too, not just to reiterate and do the fun practice, although we need that as well. Heaven forbid I ever have to actually think up a prompt on my own. But I figured today we could actually talk about something that I know a lot of people struggle with, and is something that I actually really enjoy, which is perspective. I enjoyed it in the philosophical sense too, of trying to understand other perspectives, but this is much more literal. How on earth do you make things look like they exist in the same physical plane? And that's what gets things exciting. So, and just to cite my sources a little bit, I've learned this in a bunch of different places. I'd definitely say Ernest Norling's Perspective Made Easy, while very much an old work, is also kind of the classic go-to. It's a short, easy read. And despite being old, the language isn't crazy. It's actually pretty easy to follow, honestly. Not even bad to skim if that's all you want to do. Great diagrams, all that. So, for those of you who aren't big on reading, you'd still enjoy this one. Demonstrates stuff real clearly. There's also, to an extent, figure drawing for all it's worth. It's sort of the classic work, but I'm, a little more hesitant to recommend it. Maybe a tiniest bit less family-friendly. So I'd say if you're just trying to learn this as a very beginner, stick with the Norling. Ernest I'll even throw that in chat, why the heck not? I'm not sure that YouTube's going to be able to see that, because I haven't figured out how to put chat on screen, nor have I had much of a reason to. But, if folks ever feel like chatting, again, not trying to guilt you into it, you don't have to say a word, I'm not your teacher. But if you ever want to, maybe I'll figure that out, and we can actually get some of that going up in the VODs. Which, by the way, good time to shout out, I do have a VOD channel. Every single stream that we've ever done is on that channel. So you can see the whole archive. Every little bit of it. For better or for worse. Probably for worse, but it should be fun. If this ever actually becomes a thing, hopefully the audio quality and everything isn't so horrible compared to future tech that it'll be miserable to listen through. But it might be, kind of a fun thing to have. So, back to perspective. Perspectives, I love it, actually. I really enjoy perspective. So, I've always been very much of a... Let's see. I was STEM before I was arts side of things, and so I love, like, clear, clean-cut, precise things that you can do with a lot of, like, actual precision. Which, you may think, okay, well, why the heck are you doing a drawing channel then? Because, A, art has a lot more of that than you realize, and B, it's also good to expand your bounds beyond what you know. So, win-win, really. But perspective was one of the first things that really clicked for me, because it sort of works the way I think. Lots of sharp angles and lots of stuff that you can figure out using fun little, like, they're almost like geometric proofs, but trust me when I say if you didn't like that, they're not as complicated. Although I find a lot of people enjoyed geometry even if they ended up hating algebra and later stuff. I don't know if that's just me, it feels like folks either, like, go for algebra or geometry. I don't know a lot of people who enjoyed both. But let's try to get some fun color contrast going on this one. How's that looking? Okay, yeah. And I'm actually going to straight up use the line tool on this one. A, because I haven't used the line tool, and maybe we'll mess with some of the other fun stuff like Bezier curves. Sure, that's how you say it. Probably just, okay. Definitely not how you do it. Okay, I'll stop messing with those until I figure out how it will allow me to actually manipulate the pinpoints. Maybe I need to be on a vector layer for that, which I should be anyway. Sorry, normal raster layer. I know we love you for some things, but this is not your day. Poof. Poof. Yes, poof. Save it. Save it. Yeah, sure, whatever. Okay. I feel like I saved that in the wrong place, but I'll find it. Here I am saying I like precision and everything, and then I'm just blindly saving stuff. But, yeah, whatever. So, the main thing about perspective is all of it builds off of, I'm sure you've heard of the horizon line, but really it's just your eye level. It's where the heck are you standing, and what is your eye level in the scene. So, like, an easy one to do is we'll just, let's just pop one straight at, like, roughly mid-ish screen. That's honestly, like, kind of low, like, when you really think about it, but it'll be good for some of our early examples. So this line is basically, it's the horizon line, it's your eye level, whatever you want to call it. Everything vanishes towards this line. And I'm starting with 2-point perspective. There's 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, and I'm sure that if you want to get into weird mathematical stuff, 4 point and multi-dimensional nonsense, which would be fun, but not today. But I'm going to start with 2 point because it's the one that, like, you see a lot in real life and it makes a lot of sense. Just sort of naturally when people see it in the world, it's like, okay, it feels more intuitive, I find, than a lot of the others. So, this is a horizon line. Let's say that whatever down here is ground and whatever's up there is sky. In fact, that might not be, that might be worth doing. Raster layer may have its shot yet. And also me having to actually close my darn lines. Ah, well. Okay, raster, let's throw you in here. And let's see if the fill tool's gonna... No, it ain't. Let's tweak the fill tool settings real quick. So I realize this is a slight diversion, but it's still set up, and then we'll get into the actual, like, perspective stuff in depth. Let's look at our tool properties. Reference, okay. Reference multiple. All layers. There we go. So now it's not just going to look at this layer, it's going to look at all the layers, and hopefully... Yeah! There we go. So, let's, you know, actually, let's just use one of their pre-built palettes in here. I assume that's what these are. These aren't really pre-built palettes per se. There we go. Here we go. Let's kind of get bright. Oh yeah, that may be a little too pastel. Maybe let's pale tones, soft tones. Sure, we'll go for soft tones. I feel like these aren't going to be that soft when we're doing like a big old fill of them. But yeah, you know, basic, the horizon. So we'll have our horizon lines. We'll do purple for that still because it's gonna pop. Be easy to see. So let's see. Let's get our line tool. Let's actually get like a decent line weight on this, maybe a 5. And we'll just go from end to end on it. Also, we should probably have the lines in the front. That way I can see when I'm drawing something at some nonsensical angle. Did I? Oh, undo that as well. Now let's try it. There we go. Okay, so just to reinforce. Whoa, that's not the horizon line. Let me even pinch that out of the way a little too. One more time. Okay, horizon line. There we go. Now we're getting started. So this is basically, this is eye level. That's what you see off in the distance. And everything's going to be relative to it. So I'm going to just put an arbitrary line here. Let's say that there's, I don't know, let's go with a fence post right here. We'll just make ourselves a big old purple fence post, because that's the color fence post should be. Okay, so I'm just going to give it this sort of arbitrary height. The ground, it feels more grounded here relative to the horizon line, so that's sort of like, already there's a little perspective. You feel like it's roughly nearby, but you also feel a little short when it's that tall. Which is good, because we've got kind of this weird low horizon line, so we are kind of in a short way. Like, unless the fence was like here, we would feel tall if it was below the horizon, but at this sort of basic way, I'm not explaining that well. That's not an important detail right now. We'll sort of come back to that once we got more of this. And then I'm just going to make it like a proper rectangle. Let's see if it's... heck yeah, if you hold down shift while you're doing it with the line tool, you can just pivot 45-degree angles. Woo! Okay. Good, that'll help us keep some stuff pretty simple then. So I'm... Whoop. Nope. That's fine. No, okay. That may be an issue. There we go, good enough. Okay, so we've got the fence post, and we're just looking at on this front edge. But it really... I've gone and done 2 point badly, haven't I? Okay, basically, everything in 2 point is going to be vanishing into 2 points that exist on this horizon line. That's the important part. Let's mark those well for this fence post. They may not all vanish into the same 2, but we'll start out with them vanishing into these two points. Just keep them sort of distant. And so, really, when you're thinking about it, what we're going to do is we're going to have this one, and it's going to vanish all the way to this point. This is just a guiding line. This won't be a final line. And that one vanishes there. And this one is going to vanish here and here. So now if I'm defining my fence post, this basically, like you can sort of see this already looks like a wall. If this corner is the one towards us, then it looks like you're sort of looking along 2 edges of a wall. But we don't need a full wall, we just need the fence post. So I'll do one right here coming straight down. And that will basically, it's got a very slight taper, but that's okay. That's what we'd expect. This one, on the other hand, is going to end up with a very steep taper because it's closer to this point. And that's basically because of its angle relative to us. If I were to draw another fence post of the same size over here, let's see, that's roughly the same height, give or take a little bit, and do the same thing. Now it's got the steep ones on that edge, and it'll have a steep one going over here, or a less steep one, a shallow one going there, and a shallow one going there. And it basically becomes the mirror image, because we're at a different angle relative to it. So we've sort of got our actual 2 fence posts. Let's actually try to make a fence post looking thing. Gonna have to fill in all the quadrants in here. We've got ourselves our fence posts. We made that one a little narrow there, maybe. That's fine. I mean, that's basically like the gist of it. You can draw almost any shape by starting out with rendering a box in using these perspective lines and then fitting the object into it. So, I mean, we'll start with some simple stuff and then we'll get into some of the real fun novelty with fences. Let's see. Really should have done the alignment lines on a different layer. Oh, well, I guess we sort of did. There we go. Fence posts, with just some minor abstract lines in them. Okay. Nope, I keep doing that. So we'll go ahead and toss those ones. We'll just get a new layer for new lines. Maybe let's just stick to like white lines for now. That might be a little easier to track. In the meantime, those purple ones were getting to be a wee bit of a color clash, I gotta say. But yeah, if we wanted to draw just a bench, but or how about a picnic table for starters? So let's say we've got our picnic table and the horizon line is still there. It hasn't moved. I don't know how well that's capturing on the recording, so I'll go ahead and sort of refresh it. It's still there. And let's say that our picnic table is at a different angle to us from these fence posts. So it's going to have, we're going to put it at some different lines here. Though we're going to have these 2 vanishing points are what they're called. Not vice president, but vanishing points. And so our shape, our post, this one's not a post, it's a table. Our table is going to be here. And I'm just going to draw like the little edge of the table. Maybe with the line tool. Or perhaps it's a good excuse to get some line practice, but I think we'll do that another day. I'm going to draw it sort of here. And this one I'm keeping below the horizon line, which is actually going to make it very interesting, because that means we're going to be able to see the top of the table, because our eye level is above the edge of the table. So if I draw one there, and one way over there, and we've got this one here, and this one here, we have basically made, it is basically a box. We can cut it off at any point, and it becomes a box. So I'm just going to do that. And note that I'm keeping these top ones, the only things that are straight up and down are the vertical lines. Anything else has to go to the vanishing points. So now, if I clean those out, what we have is, well, a slight gap in our horizon line, but we also have a very clear place in which we can build an object. So if we want this to look more like a proper picnic table, we can basically just grab the top piece here, and this still has to go towards the vanishing point, but it's a little more shallow on that side versus this one goes to the vanishing point, and it's going to be a little bit steeper, although not much because it's pretty close to the vanishing point in both cases here. And then, let's see, typically they've sort of got that fun metal contraption-y bit in the middle, so I'm just going to sort of make a general place where that's going to need to, fit. Pop this down here. Bring that over to the vanishing point. And then I'm just going to sort of have to guesstimate a little bit where along that edge the opposite side would be, but I think that roughly tracks. That way we've got sort of the lip there and the lip there. It'd probably be more like this if... Nope. Close enough. There we go. If I hit shift before I've put the pen down on that line, then I activate the tool size change instead of the thing I actually want to do. So, that's going to our ground line. And let's see, we'll want the benches to come out. And because these benches are going to be in the same-ish perspective of this, I'm just going to use the same vanishing points because they're all supposed to be lined up with each other. This is going to be at a different angle from the fence posts because of the different vanishing points, but it's still going to be in the same perspective because those points are on the same line. So let's bring this all the way over here and make ourselves a proper like edge bench to go alongside this table. And it'll cover some of the table up, that's okay. Only really want it to come to the same point here, so I can just take it to the vanishing point. Nope, not rotate. I'll reset that. Erase, erase. I love this vector erase tool. It is phenomenal for this sort of thing. Because again, it just goes up to the next intersection, so you can just clear out the line you need, even if it's in kind of a tight spot. Okay. Oh. Okay, actually, yes. So we'll do the 2 vertical lines here, and I'm going to do sort of the crossbar style for this one, because I think that's kind of a fun bench to do. But I need to make sure those crossbars are in perspective too, so I'm actually going to draw the box as though it's in a rectangle, and then I'm just going to do the crossbars from corner to corner. And if I just did that normally, you'd say, wow, that's clearly not even, but because it's in the context of everything else in perspective, your brain's like, oh, this edge is just further away from me, so this is probably actually the same size. But literally on the canvas, it's not. And that's the challenging part of perspective, is when we see something, we're thinking of the concept of it, really. Like when you see a box, like you're not thinking like, wow, there's a bunch of flat shapes that line up to be a box. You just want to draw a stinking box. You just want to be like, box, done. But really, if you're trying to draw a cube at an angle, it's actually more of a hexagon, really. Like, flat on the canvas, it's a hexagon. Ah, man, I botched the last one there. Ah, and it's all one line. Okay, fine. But, I mean, that's the gist of it, even if this box is kind of wonky. But, like, in 2D space, this is a hexagon, not a box. Well, I'm on vector erase. Oh, that's what. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so you sort of got to fight against your brain trying to conceptualize, like, draw a box means 4, into actually drawing what's literally, like, showing up in your vision. And again, if you want a better explanation of this by miles, there are many out there. I just sort of wanted to go through this at a bit before the start because I love playing with perspective. I find it to be very fun to draw even just abstract patterns and such in. So we'll finish our park bench. I'll do one more thing that's what I enjoy with, well, I enjoy a lot of it, but I think we'll do some fun one-point perspective things after this because it's a ride. How about we actually use the line tool? Okay, and then this, let's see, this needs to come down to this corner, and then, yep, you see when I was trying to eyeball this, I got it way off, because my brain was just saying like, oh, box should be roughly the same size, maybe a tiny bit smaller, but it's actually a lot smaller way over there. And admittedly, this table's in fairly extreme perspective, but I'm okay with that. That was kind of the goal. So this one, I am going to just eyeball to that vanishing point a little bit, because we don't need too much of that crossbar over there. um, except to the extent that like, this needs to go to it, and then we're only going to see a tiny bit of it underneath the top. That one needs to go, but we're really not going to see any of it, so that, yeah, that's fine. And then we don't need these edge crossbars anymore, because we basically just got like two flat pieces of wood here forming this bench, and then a flat piece on the top. And even though, like, again, if I was trying to draw this just with my mind, I'd probably just be like, bench, bench, X to X, and then, like, I don't know, a leg's probably coming out from there, and I do that. But that's clearly, like, not only is it not in the right perspective, like, the top and bottom are out of alignment. This leg ends up looking way too long because I just drew a normal X, when in perspective, it's really needs to be something more like this to show the tilt of it. So the perspective, it's basically these tools where you can see even, like, I get these concepts, but I can't necessarily put them into words and explain why this X needs to be exactly this way. I just know that following my sort of formula for it, it does, and it ends up making a better looking bench and scene in the process. So yeah, I think this table is going to end up just being like a wild, like, girder bar stool looking table thing. But that is a-okay, because I think it has worked for its demonstration purposes. We'll go ahead and toss the, well, I guess we can fill it with a little color. Let's see, brown is really just dark orange, and this is the closest this palette has to it, so do a little bit of table and bench fill. That should really all be covered by that, but that's fine. Okay, and then we toss the line work, and well, I guess there's one. Oh, it's just because the leg itself vanishes. Having the outlines persist would probably be good to maintain the appearance of these, but you can tell even from the abstract shapes that they're still in perspective. So, fun thing that I want to do now is a little bit of a fun jaunt with 1-point perspective, so let's go ahead and put all that away. And let's talk about 1-point perspective, because it always lends itself to just really fun, intense looking scenes. Let's see, so we'll even call these 1-point, because that's what we're going to do here. 1-point. And I'm going to stick to a palette of grays if we've got it. Not grayish, but like actual... Okay, fine, whatever. Just give me grays. We'll do our... We'll do a black background, methinks. Curiosity, if I have those invisible, is this still beholden to them? No, it is not. Excellent. Excellent. That's interesting to know, actually, but very cool. Okay, so 1-point perspective. When we were talking previously, like, we always had 2 vanishing points. When we had our horizon line, and we do still want the horizon line, which I really should have started across the other edge. Close enough. We always had the 2 vanishing points, but now we're just going to have 1. And it doesn't have to be in the dead center, but the obvious examples, it's all right in the dead center. It's the easy one. So every single vanishing point emerges from this. I'm actually going to use a slightly smaller line because these ones are not the well, like horizon line. But anything I want to do, like obvious one, like immediately we're already starting to get alleyway vibes because everything is vanishing towards the far end of the hallway. This could easily be like an ominous like pathway to a high school classroom. We can put like a little bit of a wall at the end of it. We'll just go ahead and block this off a little bit. And then if I go ahead and remove everything we're seeing over there, boom. We're immediately, and whoops, let's see. Boom, we're in an endless hallway, just right away. Everything's going to the 1 point. In art, this is very handy because you focus your view on one specific location. It really does, like, literally all the lines move towards it as a focal point. And so it's a great way to do focus there. It also adds a lot of intensity because of all the focus in one spot. In this case, you end up feeling constrained. But we can even, if we toss that out of the way, we can use it for some slightly more scenic and fun scenes too. They're not all ominous, even despite that. But they do all tend to have a strong sense of direction even so. So let's say that instead of going there, we're going to put our vanishing point way over here. And we're going to do it with a tool that doesn't try to draw a line there. Actually, we could just do this with the line tool and just do a little X. Boom. That was terrible. There we go. Vanishing point right there. So all of our vanishing point, all of our lines are going straight to it. So let's go ahead and get this line. Whoops. Nope, nope, nope. Oh, it's because I've activated the rotate tool because I clicked rotate earlier. So now my pan is a rotate. How did this get? Oh, no, that is supposed to be there. Okay, hand. There we go. Thank you. Let's move this back. So we've got 2 vanishing points there. These are going to be bold ones. And then I'm going to actually have a vanishing point, or a vanishing section here. I'm sort of thinking of this as like, these are sort of like planes in my mind. And we're going to be in the middle of this one. So these are all going to the same vanishing point. So it still has that same power of place where everything's focused on it. But let's say maybe we cut off this one a little early. You'll see what I'm building to in a minute. And we can, I've gone and hit rotate again. I'm going to go ahead and move this back to pan now. We're going to reset the rotation of this. We're going to try not to keep repeatedly hitting the R button instead of the E button for erase. But I make no promises. So erasing this, erasing that, and whatever little lines are causing it to break up like that. And actually I'm going to toss it on this side too. We'll add our 1 vertical line here. Make sure that it intersects at both, and then, holy cow, I went and did it again. Ridiculous. How am I losing my own place on the keyboard? Maybe I need to get a keyboard with wider key spacing. Okay, but we're going to get rid of these two as well. So now, and actually I'm going to do one more vector line here. I'm going to toss that part of it. Now this may just look like some weird abstract stuff, but with just a little bit of effort, this can easily become a little bit of a train station in the wilderness. We'll give ourselves a little cover there, we'll fill in. This should be in perspective to it too, but I'm just going to sort of rough it in basically. Those are a little too steep for my preference. There we go. We've sort of got the station platform here, which unfortunately because we have put the eye line very low, we can't actually see up onto the platform. So it really looks like we're like literally down below the edge of the station. It's raised quite a ways above us, which ends up being a little bit silly. But if we keep, I guess, something of a rough horizon line in there, which I'm okay with doing, we'll just rough it in a little bit so it looks a little more natural. And this is plausible because there's nowhere I could draw a line from this point that would show you the platform's floor. And since everything's vanishing this way, we literally can't see onto the platform itself. So if we had any doorways, we'd only I mean, we'd still see people's ankles, but we wouldn't see like the whole of their legs. We'll sort of get this, and I'd show you how to do these in better perspective in a moment. But we've sort of got ourselves like a little rail station with like a little sign on it. Make sure that's pointing towards the vanishing point. Anything going in that direction has to go towards the vanishing point. So they're all tilted towards that. We've got our little like blurb with our station, and it probably doesn't need the pole there. This will just be like a canopy of some sort. And that would place us meandering along the open train tracks. And that could be horribly ominous, but I'm thinking more like an open, sort of empty Wild West area where there ain't exactly a lot of trains. Or maybe we're sitting down low on the train. Although really, this is something I'd rather draw with actually a higher perspective angle, and I'll demonstrate how to do that in a second with some real extreme ones that are fun. But if you put it where the horizon line was lower, that implies that you yourself are standing higher up, versus if you put the horizon line really high in the image, it implies that you're low to the ground. So if I put this horizon line lower, meaning that we're taller, it would actually look like we were on the train itself, which would be cool. But instead, I'm going for more of a just we're meandering along the edge of the tracks on kind of an open, empty place. So I'll do one track beam here, just straight across. It's not angled towards those, so I'm not worried about it being in perspective. And I'll go ahead and do another, and so we've got that. Now, one thing that may be of interest is there is actually a really neat trick. I'm actually going to mark where the center of this one is roughly too. But there's an easy way to keep all of your, when you've got like a row of something that's all the same distance going into the horizon and vanishing in the distance, you can keep it where they look like they're the right distance from each other too. And you don't have to do any measuring or any weirdness. It's really more one of those like geometric construction things where you just got to do the right pattern. So first off, if I'm trying to do it between these two lines, so I get all the tracks, like the track boards, the cross beams that support it in the same perspective of each other, I'm going to split right down the middle. So between these two lines, that looks about right. And then, let's see, we've got our first line here. And so in order to do the gap, we need at least two of them. So I'm just going to get the rough placement of the next one here. And then I'm going to take a corner from this one, and I'm going to go straight through the middle and down here. And where this hits this bar, that's where we need to place the next one. Then I'm just going to repeat. And repeat. And I'm just sort of roughing it. If you wanted to do a proper, like, really clean looking one, you'd go a little slower than this. But, you know, this way, these immediately are vanishing into perspective. I don't have to do any weird measuring or eyeballing or complicated nonsense. It's just immediately there. And then eventually it just becomes sort of like a blur. And like, yeah, just scribble it in. It's just a big old mess, whatever. So now I can toss my alignment pieces here using the handy speed of the vector tool to just clean those out. Although it's getting a little tight up there. Whoops, lost a little bit. Oh yeah, they get pretty close together. But you can see, like, already, like, right away, these already look like they're in alignment. This one doesn't, because it's actually a little wide, and really I should have just placed them all first before adding any width to them. But yeah, already it's like, oh, okay, these look like they're the right distance apart. And that's true, that rule holds for any repeating line of things that are the same distance apart. So whether that's a fence line, I mean, I'm just gonna eyeball this one in at this point. It's right on the horizon line. Actually, you know, if we want this to be in the actual drawing that we're doing, we ought to give it a little effort and line it up with, at the very least, the edge of the station, methinks. So I'll go ahead and put a little effort into it, I suppose. There we go. And it should just line up roughly with where the bottom edge of that would be, which is like a little lower. So we'll do this. So we got our first post. And then I'm going to do it more like a chain link fence, so I'll do the second one there. I guess this isn't right centered on the horizon line, so I'll try to get between the top and bottom here. And we'll cross through from the top of this one through the center of this one, and it marks the bottom of the next one. And then from the top of this one through the center of that one marks the bottom of the next one. Whoops. Bottom of the next one. Then top of this one through that one. Ay, ay, ay. Wants to stop doing that. Trying to draw too many straight lines, so I'm not going to use the exact alignment tool. It's not really essential for this part. So top, middle, marks the bottom. Top, middle, marks the bottom. Top, middle, marks the bottom. And you can see these are spaced out differently from the rail ties. Like the chain link fence widths are not going to be the same distance apart as rail boards. But the rule still holds for them. And actually we can sort of get further into the oh wow, I sort of botched that one. If you get kind of lazy with it in the distance when it gets really small, then they stop looking so good. But, like that one, that wasn't even. But, like, you know, because they're further apart, we can distinguish them further on, too. And then I can just clear out, whoops, and clear out if I draw on the right angle. There we go. I shouldn't have kept this horizon liney bit in here. That's going to make that complicated. But this one I can just go through. Huh, the vector tools, I wonder if it's the line drawing pen leaves some interesting gaps in it. I wonder why it's doing that way. Or maybe it's just from the intersections from this particular method. Let's see. Okay. Honestly, this might be easier with just like this eraser but smaller at this point. Like, it's absolutely a time when the vector eraser should be perfect, but because of all this overlapping lineage in the middle, it's a little bit more complicated, unless I mess with the vector eraser settings a little. And of course, it would help if maybe let's not do what I just did, because I've just realized I'm erasing all the fence posts and keeping the center line, which isn't what we need at all. Okay, maybe the vector eraser is the right choice for this, because we just go down. Try not to cut through our own fence posts. Would not be very good at keeping cattle in one place if I'm building fences like this. Let's see. Just keep on cleaning this out. And we can see exactly where each of these posts needs to be. And honestly, if this is chain link, it's really not even going to have that defined of a bottom section. Just that crossbar at the top, if you even have that, and then the barbed wire in the middle of it. And so on. Yeah, whatever. The fence gets kind of rickety after a while and fades off. But the point is, it looks like it's going into the distance, even with the rickety ones. And the rail ties do as well. So it's real easy to get effects like that. Just using that trick of, like, you basically... Let me grab the line. I'm not even going to use the proper line tool. So we can just basically... You get the two going to the same vanishing point, assuming you don't flail way off in the distance. You split the difference. You mark your first two where they need to be. And then you just cross through the middle. Zoop. And pick up where this hits the bottom line. And then cross through the middle of the next one. And so on. Except you don't do a terrible job of it like this. But even then, with this sloppy job, like, it gets the idea across. I don't know what this would be. A tornado has taken root there and is moving towards us rapidly. I don't know. Let's just clear that out maybe a little bit. But yeah, so that's part of the joy of this. And now we've got what looks like just a train track onto the empty horizon. I'll actually get the horizon line back roughly where it needs to be. We got our fence going out there. Taking out the top of this makes it look like a proper chain link fence a little too. Nice. Just the open plains in the distance. If we wanted to make these boards, you could either be consistent, or you could consistently use the same trick to place the second one, like some distance away from it, and then again, or you can just sort of eyeball it, which is what I'm going to do here. But we got our rail ties, which should really extend past the actual rail itself, but I'm definitely not going to bother with that for any more than the first few. And the ends of these, by the way, should also be going to the same vanishing point at the end there. You really want them to actually be in perspective properly. And so on. But yeah, so a fun little demonstration there. Now, I mentioned that I would show some different horizon lines, so let's take a look at that real quick. Also in one point, because it's really fun, in my personal opinion. So let's say that we're putting a really high horizon line on here. Let's go way up there. Let's make it fairly sizable too. Big horizon line. Oops, didn't get the whole drawing in there. We can zoom out a tiny bit perhaps. We can zoom in more than that. Whoa, less than that though. That good? That looks good. By the way, feel free to tell me if anything's not showing up properly on screen. I know my overlay cuts into it a little bit, and I don't want y'all to miss out on my amazing weird diagrams. Missing out on so much this one. But it's fun. The perspective's a fun one. I just like messing around with it, which again, I'll get to once I sort of finish demonstrating this. Because when I need to draw and I just need to relax and I'm exhausted, this is the kind of stuff I do. Well, not these demonstrations, but just abstract geometric stuff in perspective, I find can be really fun. So, let's grab a small line. And now that we've got this way up here, let's go ahead and do 2-point. 2-point tends to be better for most scenes, depending on what you're trying to depict. So I'll go ahead and throw these on either side of it. And let's see, what do we want to put in 2-point? What do we want to be way below? Let's see. Could be a large building. We could do that. We can do like a grand structure of sorts. We'll box in the location for it, and then we'll add some details. So let's say we got one edge of it here. You get that straight up and down. And we'll sort of get the edges. And actually, if we want this to be really dramatic, let's put the corner of the building right in the center. This first line is going to be a corner. Okay, so getting that way over there, drawing our vanishing points to the lines. Then clearing this out. And let's see, we'll go ahead and add some edges here. And we'll disconnect it from our vanishing points. Okay, we subdivide this, let's see. Roughly going towards the vanishing points again. By roughly, I mean actually going towards them. Let's do this properly if we're going to do it. Whoops. Okay, now we can vector tool it. Okay. Right. Oh, that's why the building's looking low, is because I also put it mostly below the horizon line. So we're kind of on a similar level with it, really. That actually puts us comparatively high to it, because there's this floor, and then anything from here or below is going to look like it's below us, because it's below our eye line. So you can sort of see, like, layers here. So, like, if I clear out, let me clear out this middle bit and disconnect it. So this will be two different shapes. This will be a good example. And then, well, okay, it'll be two different shapes if I connect this. And then we sort of need the bottom edge of this one, so this needs to go to that vanishing point, and this needs to go to that, whoops, that vanishing point. It's going to be real faint, but there is a slight slope to it. And with this one, clear that out and clear that out. And same deal with this one. This one to the far point to close off the top of this box down below us. Clear it out. And there we go. So now you can see roughly, because we put this building like where more of it was below the horizon line above, it actually looks like we're relatively tall compared to this box. Because only this section of it really is like above us, and this part looks like it's below us. But if we had a building, if we were drawing the same building, okay. Perhaps there's a better way to demonstrate the relative, like the actual point of the horizon line itself being higher or lower, and maybe that might be easier to show with one point, because it also has to do with where you place objects relative to it. It's not just the horizon line's relative to you, but all objects are still relative to it. So even if you're way down low, if objects are also below the horizon line, they're also still below you. But perhaps the high horizon line, I thought the high horizon line was the one that made it look like you were short. But maybe that's the one. No, it's definitely inverse. Let's see. Thinking about it. Oh, no, no, no. High horizon line makes us look above, low horizon line makes us look below, which actually makes some amount of sense. Thank you. Checking the name on this. Andrew Loomis for the guidance there. Because basically, everything below the horizon line looks like it's going to be below your perspective, and everything above it looks like it's above your perspective. So this is good correction. This is my mistake. And so the higher the horizon line is, the more stuff is below your perspective. But see, that's the beauty of these, and why I enjoy like having to graph them out. Is I had it mixed up in my head, but because I was still following the rules of the way this works, the drawing still worked out in the correct perspective. Like it's still like the logic still worked. It still was reliable, even if like it's not the perspective I was aiming for, but it was consistent within its perspective. So let's do another one. Let's actually do a low horizon line, put everything above us. And let's do a low horizon line with 1 point perspective, and we're going to do ourselves a proper skyscraper. It's the thing everyone demos when they do 1 point perspective anyway. It's good for city skylines if you want them to look imposing and overwhelming, which is frequently the case with cities as people want to depict them. So, low horizon line, single vanishing point. This is still going to look like we're way above it, though. Hold on. I need to think about this for a half a second. But we have our high horizon line, and we put it there, and everything is vanishing towards that. Yeah, that's going to look like we're way below it. It's possible I just put the box in a bad location for the other one. No. Well, like I said, on these streams I'm learning with y'all. I'm not the expert, and it's clearly showing today. My word. Perhaps I should have prepped this a wee bit more than I did. But I just enjoy messing with it, and I frequently... Part of what I enjoy doing with perspective is just throwing down horizon lines and vanishing points and then drawing stuff to them and seeing what comes out of it. I definitely take a more just like run with it approach with these. So let's do that. Let's do this lower one. Let's actually use the erase tool, and let's see what kind of a skyline we get. rather than me trying to figure this out all in my head while y'all look at a blank screen, let's actually work it out. So, we've got our single vanishing point. We're going to sort of build our structure up from this, so it's vanishing down to that. And then, if we were to draw just a line cutting across the top of it, then both of these edges also need to go, well, actually, because we're only doing single point, let's see. No, these should definitely still be vanishing. I guess straight up, because it's 1 point. Yep. Okay, so just boxing these off. So the 1 point, 2 point, 3 point is basically sort of like when you think about an XYZ axis, or like the 3 dimensions. 1 point, you're only putting one dimension into perspective, and the other ones are flat. So only the vertical of this skyscraper, which is what I'm going to have this be, is in perspective. The top, so like basically the X and Y on this one are going to just be like full right angles, not in perspective, and only Z is in perspective. So sort of like, we think about it like this, we've sort of got the 3D tools always have their like 3D tool, which is hard to render not in perspective. But like in this case, these two are ignoring perspective entirely, and we're only worried about the one, which is again great for these dramatic shots. Because I can throw down just another rooftop over here. I can just throw it at a right angle. I can throw down another rooftop over here. Just go until it hides behind this one, and throw down sort of like some expanding layer ones. And then all I have to do is get this going directly to this line. I just need this one to go right here. And then, boom, in perspective. So, let's see. I think that's what's going to happen here, is we'll sort of cut that off. Oh, right. I'm looking at the wrong line of it. So we've got these. That's going there. I'm going to have sort of an imaginary one going off to the edge of that one. And then I'm going to clear this out and clear them out on this side, because I guess that one is just going to be over there. But we can give it its edge too. Coming down here. This will be a vertical. Whoops, not the erase tool if I can help it. Line tool's proven a little finicky to work with my current hotkeys. Might be something to think about updating in the future. And then we can even put some stuff down here sort of like on the horizon line. Let's have one overlapping it. Let's see what that ends up doing. Go straight down and then straight over. But now these aren't just rising above us, they're also rising outward. We're sort of surrounded by them. We even have another one sort of lower down that intersects with it a little bit. Like perhaps a balcony around the edge of it. And it's going to just need to be, once again, the flat connection there. It's going to block everything below the balcony with this, and it's going to need its own perspective lines for where it's meeting the building. And so boom. And that's the kind of thing, like you can just build like a really rough cityscape with this super easily. If you want to just do, and this one really has like, well, when we go below the perspective line, now it's getting a little bit wonky, but it really does look like we're flying over top of the buildings, because the only perspective the only axis in perspective is the vertical one. So it makes it look like these just like aren't far enough apart to really have perspective matter. Your eyes just sort of blend it out. And so your eyes only end up caring about like, whoa, it's really far away down, basically. I guess it could also be really far away up, but not in the way we've currently illustrated these. So let's just keep on going and do another one. Let's, I mean, the classic example for 1 point perspective is you have 1 point at the top, and we take that point off the horizon line. That's what I was doing wrong. Yep, okay. Vanishing point up here. That seems a little vanishing point off the horizon line. Yeah, for Z. Okay, so the horizon line's usually X and Y, and the vanishing point, if it's Z, if it's the vertical one, ends up a little weird. So, like, I can just bring points down from this anywhere to the horizon line. And I can just I'm going to throw some horizontal... Nope. I'm going to throw some horizontal lines down just anywhere off of this. Sort of circling around it. We're gonna get ourselves a very interesting building here. I want this to line up. I want this to overlap a little. They're all going to this vanishing point. But the important part isn't what's above it. It's actually like, let's see. There we go. There we go. Not if I drop the line in the wrong place, but you know. Put that there. Get the ones for the edges of this, and I'm just trying to intersect these with the edges of these lines. And then we'll get one more. And then I'm going to clear out everything that's quote-unquote above these lines. Am I in a raster layer? Oh, fine, whatever. We'll just do the proper eraser for it then. Easy enough. There we go. Clearing out everything above this one. I think it's see, this is where the vector eraser would have been perfect, but no matter. Clear out these. Clear out this one. And the sections inside here. Grab this little bit here. And let's see, we don't need the inner lines for this one. Or actually, no, hold on. Yeah, this one's going to be hidden behind. There we go, there we go. Then, yeah, let me go ahead and get to a slightly smaller tool for some of this erasing as we get closer to the top. That one doesn't need it, and that one doesn't need it. And I'll basically put like a little bit of a top of our skyscraper way up there. Right. Oh, come on. There we go. There, and I'll fix this one. There we go. And so basically, it looks like we've got this tower that's just looming above us with different tiers coming down off of it. And if I had put this one in the right place, I could have even had like sort of another tier here. Let's just sort of eyeball the line for that. Sort of see me eyeballing it. When I eyeball, I also literally move with my wrist. I just don't put the pen down. And we can just clear this out. And yeah. Suddenly you get sort of these cascading forms of a very tall building here. If you want to do a Mayan like pyramid this way, or perhaps an old Babylonian ziggurat, this would be absolutely a grand way to make them look imposing. If you really wanted them to look like they were far, far above the viewer. But that works in 2-point perspective as well. So let's do the same thing now that we've figured out, I think, where our hiccup was, which was trying to put all 3 vanishing points onto the horizon line, which at some point that doesn't work. You need 2 of them on the horizon line and 1 not there. So let's do, once again, let's do a really high horizon line. Let's do a really low vanishing point. And let's get some structures going on here. This is going to make it, once again, look like we're well above these buildings. And I'll have our sort of X and Y points on here too. So this is actually what we're getting to, and this is one that I really, really like. This is where a lot of the fun is 3-point perspective, where we've got all 3 axes, X, Y, and Z, in perspective. And so that's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to... I don't need to figure out. I'll continue these lines. This one, continue this one. And then now I'm bringing this one to here. And this one down. And we're back to vector erase, thank heavens. So we can just get rid of these. And all this, well, the horizon line should probably still be there. And okay, what did I do wrong on this one? Sorry, I didn't have much of a chance to warm up today. It was a heck of a very busy weekend. And then unfortunately having the job means that I have to do job things. But let's see if we can't figure out what's going wrong with this one. Oh, I know what's going wrong. I'm trying to connect it to this line. This line, for the relevance of this building, this line stops the second we reach this corner. What I should be doing is not that. I really need to be thinking about, let's see, if I take this point and bring it to this one, and I take this point, so these are the corners of the top of the building, and now it automatically basically generates where this corner should be. So yeah, we take the two lines, and where they intersect is 1 point, and then we draw these. We can use our two edge lines we use to define the outline of the building, and then bring them to the opposite perspective point. And that'll make sense when I do it again a few more times. Because this is where you can get some wild scenes. So yeah, so we've got one skyscraper there, or just like a really, really wild exclamation point, like one of those 90s ones. In fact, we can literally just make it a hovering block if we really want to. And just cut off the bottom section here. And add another cube if we're using these same lines. I guess I probably shouldn't have cut the bottom off just yet. We'll use more per second lines. We'll basically mark the top of a cube that is lower, but directly the same size as it. And we'll do the same thing we did before, where we're taking... So we've basically marked it where we've got the two outer lines, and then we've got this one central line. And both of these initial, like... Okay, so to explain this well, let's think about... We've got the left side of the building and the right side of the building, and then we've got the corner that's facing us. For the closer edge, we basically just take the rightmost point here and move it and take it here, take it to the center point facing us, and we take the leftmost point and just bring it straight to, once again, the one that's facing us. And then, in order to get the far side, it's basically going to have to be the opposite. So we're going to take this edge corner, and instead of going to the closer point, we're going to go to the far away one. So we're going to take the left edge and bring it to the right, and take the right edge and bring it to the left, and that's going to give us the far side. So we'll do the same thing again here. We've got our closer corner defined, and we've defined the edge of the rooftop here, as I'm going to keep calling it. And so then I'm going to take the left corner and I'm going to bring it to the right side. I'm going to take the right corner and I'm going to bring it to the left side. And that's going to define in this space here the actual top of this building. So now we can clear out everything in the middle. Well, nope, not that line. That's a line that stays. Clear this out. Clear out these. Yeah, unfortunately, the vector tool and lines don't seem... Come on, vector tool. You can do better than this. Come on, there we go, there we go. Okay. So now we've got two blocks that are basically floating, but because they're using these same outline edges, like as in the corners of the building here, like the left edge here, the right edge here, and this one, they appear to be exactly the same like shape, just further away, because they're following the same perspective lines. And so if we were to, say, add another shape onto the side of them, I'm going to pull this down here, but instead of going all the way to the corner, I'm basically going to add a new corner. I'm going to bring it up from here and just pull it right there. I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to clear out this line because I don't need it now. Vector erase. Hype you up so much. Maybe I need to adjust its line tolerance a little bit. Let's see if that's something I can tweak real quick. Wait. I'll leave it alone for now. That's fine. Let's see, but we can erase that one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same line. I'm going to take the corner of this one to this vanishing point, and this one to this vanishing point. And then I'm going to, in order to define the far edge, because I don't want this to just cut through my block, I want it to be on it. I'm just going to go here. I can pick anywhere really, depending on how much I want this to look like it's sticking out. Because I want it to sort of look centered, I'm going to pick one where there's, at least based on my rough estimate, about the same amount of space to the left and right of it. Not physically on the canvas, but in perspective. So just trying to eyeball that a little bit. I'm sure there's a way to do that with precision, but it is not one that I can remember off the top of my head, unfortunately. May not be one I've learned at all. It's kind of not the most common use case. Well, I'm sure it is. But I'm not sure if there's a trick to it, or if you just have to get better at, like, sort of getting your eye in, per se, which is advice I hate to give, because I always hated receiving that advice. It's like, oh yeah, just get your eye in. And it's like, yeah, but how? Tell me the hows. Give me the process. But unfortunately, I don't have an easy process for that part. Alright, so I'm just basically going to repeat for this bottom edge. Just defining down there, and then we can clear out anything in the middle. Don't need this line anymore. Need this line. Toss them out. Oop. Oops. Get a slightly smaller eraser. Size of the eraser doesn't matter so much, except insofar as it can fit in between the lines. Ah, and don't need are these ones. So, oh, and I guess I should add one line here up to this corner to show exactly how much of it, like basically adding the depth to it. This is the side of this cube that is now latched onto the edge here. So we don't need that, and we don't need that. And so now we've got these blocks that look like they're connected together. I can even add another one on the other side here with fairly minimal effort because all the corners are covered. I just need to show roughly where the edge of it is. Guess I'm just going to need to read. Whoops. Wow, come on. That a little more in. Really? A little carried away with the vector erase, perhaps. Okay. But now it basically looks like we've got a block like this on either side of it. And it wouldn't be a far cry to just turn this into a chain link at that point. We've already got the intersecting opposite blocks. That's easy enough. If we wanted them to sort of look like they melded into each other, we could do that. Depends on what your... Rats. I'm going to go ahead and correct that now before I confuse myself later. But let's go ahead and just not rotate. Nope. And now let's get the erase tool, and we can clear this line out, and that little bit of that line out. And it basically sort of looks like that, but unfortunately because of the, I mean with the shape, it's not going to blend too much. You still, like in your mind, you're like, oh, this is obviously a rectangle. And so your mind sort of closes it, but it does make it look a little bit more like one form instead of two. However, I kind of like it better with the distinct edges defined. And so that's, I mean, that's sort of like, I mean, it's a fairly extreme angle, but that's basically the joy of three-point perspective, is you can basically render anything. And once you render a box, like it's easy enough to put other shapes into it once you define what this box is, and it'll help them stay in perspective. Like, I mean, there we go. Even if we wanted to make a circle, we just sort of, you define the halfway points on each of these. So you could sort of actually use the, not this method easily. You'd need to cut it in half. You're gonna have to eyeball at least one halfway, or literally measure along one line, take the halfway on it, and take it down to the center. I'm just gonna eyeball it in this case, but I'm going to mark roughly where the halfway should be on each of these, and then I'm going to draw a curve where I make sure that the only point that the curve is intersecting the edge is exactly there. Even with my rough attempt to draw a curve, which again, I got a little pointy on this edge, so let's clean that up a tiny bit. But even that is in perspective. Yeah, eyeballing circles is always a little tough. And if we really wanted to make this look hollow, I'd sort of just pencil that line in and then make sure that we'd done the same sort of curve over there. And we'd end up with just a hole in our structure. Of course, these are terribly penciled in curves, but they are still following the perspective we've defined, as opposed to just trying to sort of eyeball it with the circles. Where you're like, well, it's a circle, but I know it's like sort of an angle, so it kind of needs to be oblong. Like, you just get way worse stuff. Like, even with my bad penmanship, just doing this in like 10 seconds, still way closer. So, clearing that out. And boom, now it looks like this is, I mean, this could even expand over into it if we really wanted it to. So once again, not to be aiming that at that perspective line over there. I could bring this one down, just sort of eyeballing, and have it connect over there. And so instead of the edge of this, now, let's see, lining up with this one. Boom. Now we can just have it look like this is an L-shaped bracket going through the middle, and it actually is kind of like a chain link, although this one looks obviously much more straight and properly angled than sort of awkward hole drilled in that one. So, let's see, we're 1 hour in. We'll keep going a little bit. Probably a lot, honestly. We'll just keep on plugging along with this. Let's go ahead, though, and dump all these into just like one folder, perhaps. I'm just going to call this like the review, sort of refreshing on all this stuff. We're going to get rid of all that. So, let's, and we'll just collapse that too. Let's go ahead and add a new vector layer and a new raster layer so we get a little background for it. the fill. Okay. Where this can get to be quite, well, again, I may say quite fun, but perhaps silly, perhaps odd, is when you just start like going for different geometric shapes. One thing I really like to do is get sort of, let's go ahead and define a horizon line in here basically. And this is the only thing I'm going to use the straight line tool on this one, where I'm going to force myself to actually try to, pencil these in proper, like, okay. And we'll mark one over there. Okay. And then what I like to do is okay, I lied about the straight line tool. One more thing, because it's not part of the drawing itself, is I like to basically create different panels. And, whoa. And down first, and then shift. Actually, I want this to be oblong, so no shift. And basically just create different scenes that are at sort of different weird angles to the perspective. So I'm going to use the same points on each of these, but it's going to give us very different results depending on where we are relative to it. So if I wanted to just sort of throw a box down here, let's sort of define one edge there. I'm going to just sort of feel my way across with this one. Again, I'm just sort of roughing these in. So this box isn't even going to be fully on the screen. We'll just sort of rough that one in. Vector erase these and be done with them. Okay, so we've got ourselves a box here. I'm not even sure this will turn into anything other than just floating shapes, but I find those to be pretty fun to work with sometimes. So it's just hovering from the ceiling. Perhaps we can give it a matching one down below, or matching-ish, rather. The corner would be roughly here, methinks, so I can sort of try to fit it to that. Really, let's actually let's figure out where the heck that corner would be. A little bit of difference on this one. Oh, not vector tools. Go. Carry that over. So yeah, it's right about here. Wow, that really does sort of line up right on top of each other. That's rare. Okay, so we'll carry that down. Got this edge here that we'll carry down. Here that we'll carry down. I'm basically going to just do the same thing. Eyeball this over. Get kind of matching ones. That one to this. And then once again, once we're doing these back edges, it's sort of flipped. So the front edges, left goes through the left edge to the center, right goes through the right edge to the center. This one, we're taking the left edge that we've just defined and taking it all the way to the right side of the screen. And vice versa. And that way we sort of get the four edges of this box in perspective. Pardon me. And so now, we can do anything with this. Again, part of me likes just keeping them with geometric shapes, but part of me thinks, like, let's see what happens if we try to add like a whole row of them. So continuing this line towards this point over here, not too quickly because it does still need to get there at the far side of the screen. And let's just basically do a few more repeats of this. Do another line here. We can continue this one. Again, once again, these are a little off. They should be pointing all the way over here. I got the angle a tad steep on that. We'll make it a little more shallow. Again, if you're really trying to do more than just like doodles and stuff, you should really like actually draw the perspective lines. And I know this has proper tools where they won't be actual lines you have to do, but you can just, it's probably this ruler tool to be honest. But you can just sort of have them visible and then you can turn them off when you're done and it'll just be your own drawing lines without all the perspective stuff blocking the way. But I don't know, it's not as good for demonstration. This would have been a good opportunity to learn those tools, though, so maybe next time we do anything with perspective, we'll have a go at figuring those out. So, even with my super rough perspective here, we can still get the gist of what we're looking at. So again, this needs to come here. Not as a vector erase, though. Go there. Then we're just doing vertical lines for the Z. We're only doing 2-point, not 3-point for this one. And so we can end up with a row of these going off into the distance, basically. Each one getting a little... Again, if I wanted to do my proper equidistance, we'd use the same trick we used before to do equally spaced fencing or any other objects. Perhaps I'll do that with the bottom one, actually. It'll probably just demonstrate how difficult it is to eyeball it and how far I've gotten it off. Okay, let's see. If this is really here, then this is actually going to be way more shallow at this point. More like that. Okay. So let's actually do this for this lower one. I'll bring out the straight line tool just so we can do it with a little bit of precision because we're kind of far. Actually, you know what? No, we're just going to do it in this panel over here. We're going to create a row of something. It'll probably just be a row of cubes. That's all I'm really looking for right now, anywho. Okay, so line tool. I'm going to draw 1 band, 2 band. And then this is the best trick in the world. You can find it in a lot of different drawing and perspective guidebooks. I got this from the Ernest R. Norling. I'll throw that in chat again in case anyone didn't see it early on. Ernest R. Norling. Old perspective book, but it's still kind of the standard on it, and it is a surprisingly easy read with lots of good diagrams. So if you're not big on textbooks, don't worry. Like this, it may have a little bit of language that sounds like 1920s, 1930s-y, but it is like it's still approachable. It's not like reading a particularly obscure Shakespearean play or Beowulf or Le Morte d'Arthur or something of that nature. So the trick with this is we've got our 3 lines here, and then yeah, I'll actually use the line tool for this too. Let's go ahead and just actually I want horizontal lines for this one, so I'm going to go ahead and do a horizontal line straight across. I need to find 2 of these. No, I don't need to do that though. So you define, in order to make a row of things that are the same size and that they vanish off into the distance in perspective and still look the same size and vanish correctly, what you need to do is define where the first 2 of them are. And so I've got my outer borders for this, which are this one and this one. And then I've basically done a line through the middle of it. I've done it slightly off, but it's close enough. And then you're going to define where the first 2 are in your screen. So this will be like the first 2 pickets in your picket fence. This will be the first 2 rail ties in your railroad. If you're doing like a colonnade of an ancient Roman building, these would be the first 2 columns. And then what you do is you take one of the edge corners and pass it through this middle of the first one, and you pass it through the middle intersection of the second one. And you go until you hit the outer line. That's going to take us to here, and then that's where our next one is. So once again, you draw this parallel to the previous lines, or in this case, it really should be in perspective to this one even. But I haven't gone, I've gone and not done that at all, have I? So we'll actually do this again. It'll be a good demo. We'll grab these fresh, and I'll correct this middle line being a little bit off, because really it does actually end up making something of a difference. So middle line. There we go, that's better. So then here's our first cross tie, and here is our second, we'll say. So now using this trick, once again, we'll bring this over, making sure we pass through the middle, and then over to the edge. So this intersection is the really important one. And then another one that picks up right at where it intersects the edge. And then we just repeat. Top corner, through the middle, to the edge. Then we just repeat. And this one's going to be already in pretty intense perspective here because it's gaining some distance from... Actually, this shouldn't be too crazy compared to where the focal points are. But it is already getting pretty close together. I guess because we don't have a lot in the way of context around this space. So, let's see. I'll even just start it with that. We'll just have a few of them in perspective. It doesn't have to go all the way to the horizon. This works for any set of things, even if they don't go all the way. So then, now that we've defined the distance between each of them, I accidentally deleted a little bit of that one that I wanted to keep. Keep that one. And then we'll vector erase a little bit. Just a little bit more. Oh, really? That was... There we go. We don't need that straight one. We don't need these. Okay. So now, I've basically got... If I can even remove these edge pieces now, and I'll basically have 3 shapes that are in perspective proportional to each other. Or at least the gaps between them are. That's just continuing this line. So now, I can go ahead and do this. Go ahead and do this. Because we're in this endless void, there's not a lot of context. And then this will just continue onward, basically. And then I can go ahead and just do like a little bit of a cutoff here. Move everything below it. Once again, remove the gaps in between. And then these corners need to actually go to the far side here. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll grab 1, and we'll grab 2. And like, I know the straight line tool makes it look like, oh, it's a straight line tool, obviously it's easy to do, but like, you can do this by hand real easily too. You don't need a ruler or a straight edge, especially not after you sort of get your eye in. Let me clean up everything in this gap real quick. Wow, not even close. Let's try this again. Wow, okay. Oh, I guess because the vector tool isn't actually like a straight line tool. Okay. There we go, come on, let's keep our panels a little clean. Okay. So we could have kept this pattern going indefinitely, but it also was getting pretty tight because of the sharpness of the angle on some of this one. That's avoidable if you're setting up your scene to be like an actual normal scene and not just stuff in the void. It will be easier to avoid that happening. Okay, one thing we can look at that might be a fun one for this piece here too is let's actually carry this edge all the way up, and same with this one. Because it's a good way to demonstrate how these change relative to our perspective. And we talked about this a little bit before. But obviously, so this is our horizon line, which if you weren't here at the beginning, the horizon line is basically just eye level. So it's wherever your eye level is. If you're squatting way down to the ground, it's going to be in one place. If you're standing way up high, it's going to be different. Let's see. Typically, if you're up high, you're going to have the higher, I think the higher horizon line. And if you're squatting down, you're going to have the lower horizon line. But I do need to double check that because I was having a little trouble constructing that properly previously. But what we're going to do is we can at least see where they are relative to us vertically. So this block is like obviously below us. We can see the top of it. It's really easy to tell that it's below us. If we construct a block up here, above this is the horizon line, by the way. We construct a block up here. It will immediately be obvious that it is above us, because the piece that faces us is the bottom of the block, not the top. So like right away, just boom, that one's above us, this one's below us. If we construct one right on the horizon line, we're not going to be able to see the top or the bottom. And it is indeed going to look like it's eye level with us. Clear that out, we can clear out the middle line, and we can even clear out these ones connecting it a little bit. Oop, I guess that was actually the corner of it, wasn't it? These connector lines in the middle don't matter at this point. Not gonna worry about that. Okay, so yeah, you can see right away that relative to where the horizon line is, assuming I didn't accidentally erase it like a fool, but these vanishing points are on the horizon line, so that part's easy to tell. Like, you can immediately see, like, oh, this is above, this is below, this is eye level. So anything we draw down here is going to look like it's way below us, or if we put the horizon line way down low, anything we draw up here is going to look like it's way above us. Okay, so yeah, low horizon line means that you're pretty low to the ground because most things are above you. Got it. Yep, that makes sense. So because we got kind of the high horizon line, especially relative to this bottom panel down here, man, I wish I'd lined these panels up. It doesn't matter, it just is a little annoying, but that's fine. So we can do like a wave of cubes or something interesting down here then. I'm not going to worry too much about ruining these other drawings with perspective lines at this point. So let's actually I'm going to throw down just a whole slew of perspective lines down here. Just a whole bunch of them, and then I'm going to try to form them into something relevant. Let's just go ahead and fan these out. The same deal with this one. I'm going to throw a whole bunch right next to each other on this one. And we'll try to turn this into something. Okay, so we've got these perspective lines. So let's define one center cube. It's going to be like our main, like the main cube. I'm going to make it this one. So I'm going to go straight down from this corner. I'm going to go straight down from this corner. This is our cube. Then I'm not going to worry about these lines because they're defining that cube. And if I want this one to be level with it, which I actually kind of think I do, then I'm just going to leave it like that. But it's the same lines on here. So it's the same height. It's just they're not going to be connected. I'm going to bring this corner. Well, nope. Is that going to be Nope, that's light source. Okay, we're not messing with that right now. Okay. And we'll clear this out, we'll clear that out. Okay. So actually, I can continue this over, and we can basically have an upper level, and then we'll do some interesting stuff in the lower level on these ones. I can clear this one, that one, so on. We're even escaping out the bottom of the frame a little bit. Okay. So, now, I'm going to take this corner straight down, and I'm basically just using these to form our blocks here. I'm going to go ahead and toss that one. I'm going to bring this one down. Suddenly it looks like there's a bigger gap there, both because there literally is, but also it makes these blocks look much taller when we can see how far down they go. So let's clear some of this out. I'll make this one another one of these. And so this one already looks like it's hovering, and I'm probably going to want to do a similar thing with some of these. So let's grab this horizon line over here, and let's just chop this one so that it hovers. Not going to worry about the others. I'm going to bring this corner all the way up to this vanishing point. Clear it out of this one, behind it. And boom, now we've got a couple different tiers of hovering blocks. If I want to shave the top off of this one so it's a little bit lower as well, I can do that. Assuming I, hand the camera and don't drop the line in the middle of it. So once again, just drawing to this one, and then drawing to this perspective point. And that's going to be our new definition of where the top of this is. Let's get a better line for that. Help if I lined it up with the actual corner of the object. No, I do not. Please do not do that. Okay. Zoop, zoop. Okay. There we go. Now this is floating. It's clearly lower than the others because it's on a. This line is on a different perspective line from this one above it. These guys look taller. It's basically, as with everything in drawing, it's all how it is relative to the other objects in the scene. And keeping everything on this one perspective line keeps everything relative to the same place. And so they suddenly, instead of floating around each other, they're all in alignment, or at least clearly in the same perspective. The same distance, you can tell distance easily, and so on. Even if the objects are strewn all over the place and they're at weird angles, they're all playing by the same set of rules, basically, so you can still find them. I mean, actually, yeah, let's do that now. That'll be a good demo. Goodbye, bottom panel corner. We knew ye so little. Okay. So let's not vector erase that. Okay, I am going to vector erase some of these ones around it, though, because I want to give it a little space to float. Make these sort of their own deal here. Oh. Go back to the line tool. I always forget I'm on the erase tool when I accidentally select it too much. It's easy to do. Okay, so that's going to just go to this one. That's fine. And I'm just going to eyeball that one. Okay. We've got some interesting shapes going on over here. Maybe we make this one just the tiniest bit shorter. It'll be like a stair step down, basically. Come down to it. There we go. This. Actually use the proper shift that lets us like lock these lines directly down on 45-degree angles. Makes it real easy to do an up and down line like that. Okay, let's clear this out. Actually, we can make it look like it loops around the back. Nah, I mean, it does technically work, but having the back line line up exactly with the top makes it confusing. Okay, then we'll clear that out. But this needs to be another line from over here, basically. So instead of stopping at this line, this now goes all the way to this one, and boom, it's on a different level. Same edge there, though. No. No. How does my hand keep getting just slightly out of alignment on this keyboard? I need to figure out what's causing that. It's on the erase tool. have even gone further down probably if I wanted it to do that. Okay. But even so, next to each other. So the main one I wanted to look at though, I'm just going to go ahead and fill out this as a cube. Because even if we put stuff at weird different angles, right now all of these are clearly in the same perspective and everything, but they're also clearly at the same angle because they're all going to the same two vanishing points. So if we want to not do that, well, first off, we can have something that isn't aligned with them per se, but is still vanishing to the same place. And so we'll do a little bit of that. I'm basically going to mark where the center of each of these squares is. And really, I probably ought to mark where the center of the ones I can't see are either. So assuming, fine, we'll line tool it, but I'm going to do it in a different color just so I can get out of the way a little bit. That one. Then I suppose this is going to be a vertical down. Then this one needs to go off to this. This vertical down. Do vertical up. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Then we'll just toss those ones. And this one. That one. Okay. So blue is the background. And I still want to mark where the centers of those blue ones are, though. So, marking the center of each square, this is the back side there, back side on the left, and the center of the bottom. And while that looks insane in 2D, because we got this perspective context, we can sort of still render it in 3D. In fact, not just sort of. But let's go ahead and draw like basically a tetrahedron in here. Not a tetrahedron, it's literally an octahedron, isn't it? 8-sided. Connecting up these points. This is the side that's facing us. There. No, there wouldn't be one there. What am I talking about? This. There we go. Kind of at a weird angle to it. But even though it's clearly not in alignment with the other objects here, it is still following the same perspective, vanishing the same way. And so it still works in the context of the scene. Now, what we could also do is just, we could even take our starting square here, and actually, we're just going to toss it. Goodbye, starting square. You've been fun. We're going to follow you. We're going to make a new you, though. Because we're going to have a different vanishing point. I'm going to move a vanishing point here. And I'm going to use this one to do this square. It's still going to be here. Actually, the vanishing point over here would need to move the same amount over, so it's going to be a few inches that away. So, if I want it to look like the same square, that is. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Needs to move the same amount as this one. Then let's just sort of grab that. Grab a spot here. Come on, there we go. Do the same invisible vanishing point there. And then once again, we can just take the three edges down. And even though this is clearly going to different vanishing points from everything else, it is still in the same perspective as everything else. It's not exactly a square, but it's close-ish. But it's clearly still on the same plane as these. It's still clearly in the same context. You can still understand it because these vanishing points are on the same horizon line. If I just do some willy-nilly vanishing points, like if I just took a red line and wow, come on, there we go. We'll put one there. We'll pop one over here. Yeah, we'll keep them on the same level, but clearly in different places. And if we're just following this, like we're not going to be able to make any sort of shape out of this that looks like it's part of the scene at all. And not just because it's overlaying on it, but because it's literally following a different plane of different perspective entirely. And so it's going to look completely out of sync with everything. And again, with geometric shapes, this is harder to tell, but as soon as you're getting naturalistic things, if you draw a chair that's like, you can tell this looks like it's steeper because the vanishing points are closer together. This literally looks like it's vanishing further away from you faster than all of the other objects near it. And that immediately just, even if you can't explain why, it jars your brain and you're like, no, no, thank you. And while that's, with these abstract shapes, it's whatever. But when you do that with some like actually coherent shapes, something like let's do two chairs. Let's do a red chair and a blue chair. And let's say blue chair is going to be on these vanishing points up here, and they don't even have to be. I mean, it probably ought to be level. I think you can get some interesting stuff when you have non-level vanishing points, but it's definitely more like abstract Escher looking stuff. Admittedly, that is a lot of fun in my mind, but okay. So we've got two sets of vanishing points. So let's say that I'm trying to draw a chair right here, and I am going to freehand it, but I'm actually going to put some effort into it. So we've got sort of the back corner of the chair here, and I won't freehand because I'm trying to actually demonstrate perspective. The sharp lines are really nice for demonstrating perspective. Like I can freehand it, but there is just something convenient about being able to just do this. Okay, so I'm gonna make a box to put the red chair in. So we've got sort of this will be the far back corner of the chair. So this will be here. We'll have another one here. And this is going to be a very steeply perspective chair, by the way, but that is okay. Okay, and then this is the closer corner, and these are going to line up because they're going to the same perspective points. That is a-okay. Yeah, so that is a steep perspective chair. But it's not a wrong perspective chair. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out some of these lines here. Whoops, needed that one. Yes, that's technically, like those are the back and this is the front. That's fine. And then for the blue one, we're going to do the same thing. I'm actually going to take a half a second to make sure that we're getting these roughly the same size. This is the one I really need, because I want to make sure that the starting line I used is the same, basically. Literally the same starting line. Doop, doop, doop. We'll just do the same thing. So we're going to bring these over. We're going to bring this over. And roughing it in a little bit. And then same logic here. Let's roughly this far over on the inner one, and like a little less far over that one. Same deal. I've made that one too steep, haven't I? Yes. Okay, we'll give it a little more breathing room, fine. Okay, there we go. Bring that to that one. Bring that to this one. Bring that to that one. And right to left, like so. Once again, these are going to line up basically vertically up and down from each other, because we constructed them the same way, and that is going to be consistent. And so we've got our two boxes. I don't know why the perspective on this line in particular looks so wonky. I'm going to double check that line real quick. Sorry. Just if we want this to be a good demo, I thought I clicked red. Then I want to make sure that we're actually demoing it right, even though this is clearly pink and not the same red I've been using. Okay, then yeah, this was just a little bit high, and so on. Okay. Well, okay, that was all. I think I ended up moving some stuff down that I didn't mean to, so okay, we're gonna leave that as is. There we go. We'll just fix that one line so it actually, whoops, nope, don't want to select all. Okay, there we go, that's right. And we don't need this blue one in here. Okay, so now if I create a brand new layer, and I actually try to draw a chair inside each of these, they're going to turn out super weird. At least relative to each other. So using our red one, we've sort of got... Okay, and this I am actually just going to pencil in. I know I've said that a lot, I actually mean it this time. And I'm going to do it on the right layer, darn it. So we'll have like a nice high back chair. We'll sort of put the seat in here. I'm just going to eyeball where that needs to go relative to the perspective lines. It'll have chair feet. Like you do. Well, again, we're not doing anything ornate with this. It just needs to be a recognizable object. you'll see that even the edge of these feet are following the perspective. Like this little edge needs to come down this way. This one needs to go way over to this one, so it'll look almost level. Same deal here. This one looks really steep, but when I add the leg and add the inner section of it, that goes there. This goes to the really shallow one way over here. The closer the vanishing point is, the steeper the angles are going to be. Just a good rule of thumb. Even with my... I'll clean up the lines a little bit. But even with my sort of crazy lines, it'll still be recognizable. We can get the back leg of the chair really easily like this. Clean out the stuff that's actually on the far side of it. Okay. And then same for the vertical back. We'll just do like a nice tall vertical back. You know, kind of snazzy-ish, but not really. Well, okay, we'll keep it simple. Maybe add a crossbeam. Every good chair could use like a little bit of a crossbeam. If we try to draw a blue chair, even at like the same angle, it's not going to look like it exists in the same plane of existence, because it literally doesn't. The vanishing points are in such different places that these two shapes have nothing to do with each other. Okay. Bring this edge all the way down. Halfway decently. Yeah, fast lines are just fast line. It's better to redo a few fast lines and end up with one that actually looks proper than to try to slowly feel it in, because the feeling it in always ends up with terrible scratchy lines. As I say as I do it right then. One's way over here. Filling that in. There we go. I made this one like a little higher. We could even... I'll break out the select tool one time on this stream. Just the once. Because I've gone and put this a little bit too high. And this doesn't really work because, it, you know, perspective-wise, these angles should be different depending on how they're moving relative to these vanishing points. But the difference here is small, and it still works for the demonstration. Straight up and down. Once again, following these lines that we use to define the perspective when I'm defining the outer edges of things like the chair feet. And then we're just keeping all our vertical lines truly, properly vertical. Okay, so I mean, looking at this chair looks crazy wonky anyway, but part of that is just, it's like, that wonkiness exists in this chair too, but it's the feet that are sort of at that extreme angle. This is just a chair in like really steep perspective. If we had a whole room in this same perspective, the chair would look right in the context of it. Whoops. Like if I were to just sort of casually on the lower layer pencil in like a room. It's a weird room, but the chair belongs in it. If the room had tiles, the chair would still fit on the tiles normally as you would expect. It'd just be like this room just has really intense perspective. Going up the wall. It belongs here. It's just weird. Mainly because with this kind of intense perspective, you'd really expect like the z-axis to also be in perspective, but we haven't done that. We're only doing 2-point. And so it looks a little wonky relative to the straight vertical lines. But that's fine. The blue chair, however, like clearly they're in the same angle, but they're not in the same perspective. Your position relative to the blue chair is super different. And so like, and again, I know they look wonky, but again, that's just because they lack the context of the space around them. We can do the same thing with the blue chair. We can give it a room to live in. And within this room, the blue chair looks normal. Oops. Yeah. So the fact that because these perspective points are on completely different like horizon lines, it's like you have two different eye levels at once. And that our brains aren't designed to comprehend that, and it just looks like the chairs don't match each other at all. Even these rooms, like imagining these as the edges of rooms, there's no way for them to mesh in space without just horrendously colliding with each other. So, unlike that previous one, where we had, let's see, if we hide these, we've got all these different shapes, a million different shapes, and they're all over the place. Sure, some are scratchy and scraggly, some are vanishing very cleanly, but they're all, some are at weird angles, but they're all clearly in the same planes. They clearly make sense relative to each other. I could draw chairs in here every which way, and as long as they follow the perspective lines, they'll make sense. But as soon as you get these points where you've got like different things looking at different horizon lines, even if they're looking at different vanishing points on the same horizon line, that's fine. But as soon as the vanishing points are on different horizon lines, they don't exist in the same universe. Like, you've just created a parallel dimension that's literally not parallel to the other one. Like this red one. This red block doesn't make sense compared to anything else here. Whereas if I were to, say, very roughly pencil in, none of these are terribly chair-shaped, but, I mean, you know, fine, we'll have a very flat chair. Here's the seat of the chair. As long as this chair is existing inside of this box in a way that makes sense, it is going to make sense in this world. Even if the chair is weird and squashed and weird, like, even if the chair's proportions are bad, its perspective, its angle relative to the rest of the world is still fine. Let me tell you, this chair has stinking bizarro proportions, but it still makes sense in this world. It's still, like, you can tell where it is relative to everything else. With these two chairs, they don't exist in the same place. Your brain can't, like, parse them as being in the same place. So, yeah, what I end up actually just, you know, liking to do, I'm not gonna worry about this one, is when I'm just bored, I'll just throw down, like, 3 perspective points. Sort of, like, just around. And I'll just have a go at seeing what I can fit into them. Because you can, like, the first box out of this will be pretty straightforward. Like, oh, okay. Top. We'll just go ahead and define the top of the box. Take each of the corners, bring it down to this lower one. Are each of these back ones going to be visible? Nope, not really. And then I'm going to use one more line here to cut off the bottom here. And then, boom, we have a box. It's at a funky angle, but it's kind of interesting. And I can do different stuff relative to it, and it'll all still make sense in the context. Once again, I'm going to sort of add just like a platform around the edge of it. Let's see if I can sort of the platform a little bit of depth. Bring it out past the edge, connect it to this line. And again, just following the same rules, like, I know I'm just sort of going fast now, but that's sort of how it ends up being fun, is when you can just sort of knock out these 3D shapes, and you can just be like, whoa, 3D shapes that make sense relative to each other in like 10 seconds, or 30 seconds. Once you sort of get these tricks down, you know which lines need to go to which points. It gets really easy to make stuff that's just like this, and I can even just eyeball that one. Bring that one back. This, I shouldn't eyeball, but I'm going. Then bring down the edge here, bring down the edge here. And we've got basically just like a series of these little platforms now. Woo! Nice grab all tool. Apparently that's W. Interesting hotkey. Okay, so that's just those layers of platforms. But what gets fun is when you move stuff out way past where it really should be on some of these lines. Like, I'll make this layer a little faint, but we'll still have our perspective lines for it. We'll just throw down a new raster layer here. Let's get something green going on just way off in the wilderness. This is kind of a harsh green. Can we get like a slightly... Yeah, that'll do. Like an IKEA green or something. If we bring something way out over here, way past where these perspectives should be, then we can get some really bold shapes. This one's here. Cut it off there. Here. There. And the bold shapes will still make sense in perspective, even though they're way beyond all three of these points. Ah, really? Okay, so the vector tool still sees the blue as being there. That's fine. And boom, now we're getting some real, like, it looks really elongated, it looks really bizarre, and if you just see it like without any of the perspective context, you're like, wow, that looks terrible. That's not a cube. That's some sort of, how many sides does this thing even have? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess it's still a hexagon. 6. But like they're not, it's not a congruent hexagon. No, that'd be two of the same shape. Equilateral, I suppose. Forget the exact word. Not a proper hexagon though. It's like this funky, like weird gem-shaped thing, but with the context of the perspective, it's like, oh, that makes sense. And then, if you want to have fun, you can try to actually draw real things at these weird angles. But that's getting a little beyond what I'm quite capable of with the digital drawing just yet, and clearly I've been a little off my game today. I'm not above admitting that. I mean, it's kind of obvious, to be honest. But it's been fun to sort of feel it out, and you can end up just doing really weird things. And if you can get the canvas going really, like if you put 3 perspective lines real close together, like let's just do this real quick. You put 3 like really like pretty, like way over here on the canvas, and then you're drawing something way off in the distance, you can get some wild stuff. Let's go way over here. Because they start to like be so elongated that they're almost not recognizable. There's one of our corners. There's one of our corners. And there's one of our corners. Let's get some of these out of the way. Let's see if I can even parse this anymore. Not that one. Nope. Need to remove. Ah, gotcha. Okay. See, it gets so extreme that it's easy to get lost in the lines. So let's try this again. We've got our shape up there. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of any of the spare lines here that we don't need. Got our shape. Oh, that might be part of it. Okay. There's a near corner, and there's a near-ish corner. There's technically a near-ish corner, but on the back side of it. And then there's the far corner way over there. We don't need this one anymore. That one, and that's technically behind it. So, if we want to add the bottom of it, we can add one here. If we want to make it really flat. And then technically, this would be the other one. We can do another one of those just to go ahead and cut this shape off at a slightly more reasonable point. And let's see. Lower side of this. I guess because it's past a horizon line, it's going to need to... There we go. Nope, I need that one. Don't need this one. Yeah, once I'm starting to do this, it gets easy to get lost in it a little bit. But technically, these still manage to look like they're in perspective to each other, even at these insane angles. And they are, like you can see, like this is clearly like a continuation of this shape. Even though this is like barely even recognizable as a cube on its own. And that's what gets fun to me. And then, if you really want to be doing interesting stuff, when you get these like super extreme perspectives, is when you're trying to actually make this into a recognizable object. But at this kind of wacky perspective, it becomes really just crazy. So let's do one of those, because I know I keep saying it's crazy and not necessarily demonstrating well. Let's do one. Let's put a single perspective point way up high. We'll do our Z way up there, and we'll do our X and Y way down at the bottom. So really, really low horizon line. So that's going to put us really low to the ground too. And then we're going to have our destination point way up here. So, step one is let's go ahead and figure out some vanishing points for this. Go ahead and define these intersections as the vanishing points. Fine. And then I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. I need to define a top to this. So, I'm trying to think, because that wouldn't be aligned with any of these. No, not really. Yeah, I'm just having to cut it off. Okay. It should be, though. It should be aligned with something. Oh, right. I haven't proper made my first cube yet. B. Did something like that. We'd have the top of a cube there. Okay. But I want the top to be way off in the distance. So, way up there is the top of our shape. Do it like that. Boom. Okay. And it looks like we're looking at a tiny hole way up in the sky now. Anyway, there should be an edge like somewhere over here, right? That wouldn't go to this one because it's already got a line there. And oh, the issue is that I'm using my actual... Duh. Okay. Don't use this as an actual, like, corner of your object or else the perspective gets real wonky. And if you want that, that's fine. But, like, let's start with not doing that. Okay. There. This is our shape. Well, it's the start of our shape, rather. Then we want to add a little bit of depth to it because I do want to try to make this into an actual box of sorts. Really, what? Where am I missing? Oh, okay. Just threw lines between the 3 points. That's not helpful. That's like a bunch of horizon lines. So, how am I blanking on this? Wow, I really am tired today. My sincerest apologies for that. Okay. Wow, okay. So, thinking about these, this is not connected to any of the 3 vanishing points. Nor should it be. It is, however, every line of it is pointed at one of them. So, let's take that approach to the thing that we've been trying to do here. Not connected to any of them, but it is aimed at them. So it's going to be like here. These are aimed at this one. There we go, there we go. This is aimed here. And we'll see what we get from this, because really, I've gone and overthought this terribly now. Might be easier for me for just a second to flip this vertically, because I'm more accustomed to dealing with it like this. Yeah, okay. Okay, got it. Line here, line here, line there, line way over there, because I want it to sort of be wider than it is long. And we connect these 3 points aiming in this direction. Maybe vanishing all the way at this vanishing point, maybe not. That's, either way is okay. Let me disconnect where they're aimed there, and let's flip this back right side up. Okay, yep. So, right, I need to find the underside, and then I can use this just to barely define a top up there. And then where that intersects will, again, just barely define, because it's so off in the distance. But it does make a difference. Like, this is technically a corner here. It's just very faint. If I were to draw an X along one side of this, it would technically look like that. Which may end up being close to what we want to do. Because what I really want here, and this may have been in slightly too of extreme perspective to do it easily, but we're still going to try, is let's see what happens when we try to draw an arch. In this case, literally floating above us, but at the very least looming way above us. So, I can, let's see, this will need to go to that vanishing point. This will need to go to this vanishing point. And basically, wow, yeah, this may be too extreme an angle to see it easily. But basically, we're going to get our curve something like that. Something like where the center point of the curve is hitting here. And then curving back down. But again, because of this extreme angle, it's a little bit hard to tell. Abs. Whoa, whoa, no. So we connect this edge here, it'll be a little easier to parse. But we can basically even say zoom in on it, but it's not like we're really getting closer to it per se. So it's not necessarily going to help on the perspective. We're basically going to have the curve, goes to the top there, comes down, and then a similar deal for the exterior. Should still be contained in the shape. So, oh, that may be the issue. This curve shouldn't go all the way to the top. Needs to be cutting off slightly beforehand. Still peaking on this center line, on a center line though. So about there. This one, again, side of the curve we can see is here. I could sort of draw an edge there, although really I need to bring it in perspective with the lower one. This is looking like some wild extreme Tron recognizer at this point. Because really, yeah, I mean that's the top of the arch itself. So then the edge of this one is going to be, and yeah, the curvature of it gets pretty extreme up there in the distance. But oh yeah, and this sort of needs to, inner curves need to match. So once again, that needs to start in the same place and go there. Here are the details. And then yeah, I mean it is plausibly an arch, but obviously with such extreme perspective, it's difficult to necessarily view it well. So maybe if we put one where it's sort of peaking more over here. Let's do the same thing we've been doing. This will be the last one for the night. It's probably for the best that I wrap this up. This has been fun, just like doodles and such, but I know it's probably not been the most helpful guide on perspective. Again, if you're actually interested in learning properly, like this is, I've just been showing some of the sort of fun stuff you can do with it, and if you really take it to a whole like Escher level, you can do some really, really crazy stuff with it. But if you want a good actual intro guide, it's the Ernest R. Norling. It's called Perspective Made Easy, and for once it actually lives up to the name. It's nice when books do that, you know? Okay. Let's try this over here. Let's wait. We'll fade this one out a little bit. We'll go back to this one. We'll get ourselves a little boulder of an arch, and I'm even going to bring it all the way to the ground. We'll see how that goes. Might end up putting us in, it's not technically 1 point perspective because it's at the one point where those all line up. So yeah, okay. But this is still not a rectangle per se. So instead of doing it like that, let's whoops. Okay. Let's define the top of our arch first. There we go. Yeah, we'll define that. I want to define it far away, but not maybe quite as far away as the top of that last one. That way we can sort of see what we're doing with it a little more. Okay, and now if that's the top, then we can get the perspective. Oh wow. Okay, this will be interesting. See, that's what I mean. Is you end up with basically they're like prompts or challenges that you wouldn't even expect when you start out with putting the points down. Like we're actually going to be under this arch. Nope, I do not. Gonna need all 4 of these for starters. All 4 of the corners coming down. Doesn't need to extend quite that far up. Okay, so this, we sort of got our box that the arch is going to be housed in. And so now we need to think about sort of the same way we were doing with the circles. Unfortunately, we can't really see the bottom of this one because we're in it. But we can sort of define a center point and figure out a few details from it. So I'm going to have to estimate a little bit as to where that's going to intersect. Quite a ways off. But we can sort of gauge, use this to draw. Oh, right, we don't have to guesstimate where that is. We can construct it geometrically. So we can connect this corner to this actual bottom corner. And we can, which for the record, again, is technically lined up with this point. It's just landing right on the horizon line. And then we need to divide this where it hits the middle here, and then just bring that all the way down. So equally dividing it the whole time. And then this intersection. Clearly I've constructed this wrong. Unless... Right, no. Yeah, I've constructed that wrong. That's fine. Thought I had a breakthrough on that. I did not. Basically... Wow, okay, line tool. Basically, the problem is that the bottom edge of this rectangle we're constructing the arch in is a full rectangular prism. It's just that its final corner is like way over here somewhere, so it's going to be a real extreme angle. I am going to sort of just try to split the difference of these two, because that should be right. Technically of this outer one and this outer, well, no. It's where this line and this outer line intersect. So somewhere right between those two should eventually point to it. Okay. And we can sort of then, using this line, I'm just trying to get some useful anchor points, because drawing circles is easier when you have a better idea of where they're supposed to be intersecting with different places. So, like, I know that this arch, I'm just going to do like a 2D arch, basically. We won't go like full St. Louis 3D triangular edges arch, although you could with this. Wouldn't even be that much harder. It's just that it's getting a wee bit late, I have to concede. We'll know that an edge will intersect there. We know it'll meet these edges here. And then for these like sort of quarter lines, it's like roughly 2/3 of the way out. If you want it to be like a nice curve, it's technically a little further out than that. But it's a helpful reference point. Trying to get like a nice curve in perspective like this. Because now, after all of that wild construction and kind of a rough mimicry of it behind, once I've got the one curve, it's a little easier to figure out where the next one needs to be landing. All of this should technically be, let's see, okay, one more alignment line from this corner through, and that's going to end up pointing that way. Technically it's pointing towards this line, so it should be a little steeper, but it is close enough for our purposes here. And we will just continue on like this. So, now if we take away all this construction stuff we've created, we have a simple two-dimensional flat, but in perspective arch. Again, once you've got one of them down, like adding more dimensions and stuff to it is not the hard part. This initial alignment is the hard part. We're literally like under it technically. See, maybe not that line. And so yeah, you could easily just expand this basically outward. And sort of rough in where the arch should be based on the continuing to shrink perspective. And this song feels like my slow descent into madness as I attempt to explain perspective for... I'm not really sure why. I just wanted to sort of mess around with perspective. I didn't mean to do like a full-on tutorializing thing with it. Otherwise, I'd have prepared actual like tutorializing materials, you know, like you do. But instead, we've just got this sort of rough perspective on it. But yeah, okay, so like, again, the second arch is much easier once you roughly know the curvature of where it needs to be. And one of these days, we could use the line, perhaps the Bezier curve, or another curve of that sort to get this real nice and clean. Maybe we try continuous. Let's see how this one works. Ah, okay, it's this one. So actually, let's see if this will work in the way that I expect it to. I'm not sure it will. If I just do these 3 points, no, yeah, see, it's trying to... It's all relative to the other things, so I can sort of wonk it in. I guess, yeah, it's kind of fitting our perspective, isn't it? Okay, okay. Actually, yeah, if I were to just do these 3 points on the perspective, yeah, it fills in pretty well. Interesting. It's this one. How do I get it to stop? Okay. But now I can't use the handles on it anymore. Oh, okay, I guess I've been doing a series of continuous ones instead. Okay, so what I actually would need to do this. Oh, no, I'd need to do this. This? This might be a tool for another day. Maybe that's it. Something of that nature. Again, that's a tool that I'd like to look into. Maybe that's what we learned today, is we've learned a few tools that I want to mess with and figure out how to use better. Oh, I almost forgot the last thing that I wanted to point out that's kind of a fun little trick for anyone who likes anime. Is a great example of one-point perspective. This will be a good thing to end on anyway. We'll just do this. Great example of one-point perspective. We'll just draw a line here. If you're familiar with the, let's see if I can't find it was the line tool, right? Yeah. With the sort of focus lines, the burst, those are just one-point perspective lines. They center in on, we can do a scattered one too. Should be able to. Come on. Okay, I've got to actually scope a little bit of it. Yeah, it's centered around that point. Boom. They're all one-point perspective lines, and like I was saying at the beginning, how one-point perspective adds intensity because it draws your eyes all to one point. That's all that this is doing. It's drawing all of your lines to this one central point. Now, that's an awful lot of them, maybe. But any of these things, whether it's... Ooh, okay, custom circle of them. Oh, that's kind of cool. You could sort of do a shape like a frog face or something and have it... See that? Now they're not one-point perspective because they're pointing at... They're still all technically pointing to the center, but there's all sorts of kind of... It's like one point if there was a big old block in the middle of the top. But yeah, as long as this is... Wherever the center of the circle is, that's the one point they're all going towards. I mean, we could even use our, like, old line tool and just, well, if it wasn't, like, the focus lines layer itself. Clip Studio Paint likes to make this on its own thing. But yeah, I mean, we could immediately just make this into sort of that same train station scene we had at the beginning. Like, we've got the building there. We've got sort of the back wall of it. Maybe the back wall of it only comes up to here. We've got kind of cutting off the edge there, cutting off the edge there. And like again, this is just a coherent, like we could do the rail ties, maybe between these two, yeah. If we were using our same halvesies trick, we could have these in better perspective. But I mean, yeah, and you've just got your horizon line basically right on, well, the horizon line would have to go through the center of this. But yeah, it's basically the same scene we did at the start. You can construct again here. These are literally just one-point perspective lines. So they're great. They're a great tool, and as with all this perspective stuff, you'll see it in a lot more places than you expect. And you'd be surprised how handy it is. Drawing in perspective, I find, is a lot of fun. Obviously, the more complicated the shape you're trying to draw, the more difficult it will get. But like if you're just doing some simple geometric shapes, and I find it especially on a sketchbook when you just sort of got freehand and you don't have to literally be drawing the lines over. Again, that's another tool we ought to look at, are the CSP guidelines, where they don't literally draw lines on the canvas. But when you're just doing it in a sketchbook and doodling, you don't have to literally draw the lines everywhere. You can just sort of get it like pretty close with the motion of a hand. It's real fun. It's real relaxing. Very cathartic. Like we'll got our little station platform here, so we'll just put a person in here. Very short person, but that's fine. There, now we got an edge. Now suddenly this is the top of the roof of the station. So like, yeah, one-point perspective. These things are great. They're very cool. Okay. And with that, I think that we will probably wrap up. I probably should have wrapped up some time ago based on how coherent I am at this point, but no worries. Very happy to have all of you here. We can see if there's anyone we want to raid. Let me, we'll see if we can do one real quick. Give me just a half a second. Never hurts to send a raid someplace. But I do need to make sure I actually, figure out how to do it and see if anyone's online at the moment who we could raid. Let's see. Tools. No, that's overlays. How do you do this? Apologies, I'm still within the first month, although our 1-month anniversary is coming up pretty soon here on Thursday. We'll have some fun stuff going for that. That'll be a good time. Okay, then, let me see. Creator dashboard, perhaps. Not the stream manager. Oh yeah, here we go, here we go. Okay, then we'll wrap up here. We'll send a raid over to Honey Goblin. She's a fun streamer, does a lot of very good art, better than I do. But one of these days, maybe we'll be able to, well, I'm sure she'll be leagues beyond by then, but maybe we'll be able to draw half that good. As long as we keep on showing up and keep on trying to learn something new each time, I think it'll be worth it. So, with that, I hope y'all have a good one.